Dena? Which one should I?
So yeah, it's Dena, but I think a lot of people call me Dena, which is fine.
Fine, okay.
Yeah, either way.
So let's start with the energy project. What inspired the whole energy idea?
Yeah, I guess that started a while ago because before I started my PhD program, I was a researcher at a think tank in New York, and I was doing research on the extractive sector in Africa. So I was looking at mineral resource extraction and how it impacted development and democratization. And so I was doing a lot of research on like coltan mining in the DRC. I was doing research on oil production in Nigeria and uranium production in Niger.
Wow.
And so I took a research trip here. I think I was here in Africa about 6 months, traveling to those spaces, and doing the research there, doing interviews. And then along the way, I just got into a lot of conversations with people about energy, and thinking about, in terms of natural resources, like the fact that there's so much extracted from here and exploited, but then the natural resources that you normally see are not for the benefit of people on the continent. And then especially in terms of energy resources, we've got the sun all the time, and so many people would say, we have the sun all the time, why are we experiencing electricity disruptions? And then I'm a political scientist, so connecting that to I studied political economy, so connecting that to economic development, and so the difficulty of actually developing economically if energy is not consistent. And so I just started thinking about those things, and also, would read, Kwame Nkrumah, and also Thomas Sankara was really influential to me. So I had all of these kind of thoughts in my head, but I actually stopped doing that research when I went to grad school. But then when I was doing research in Paris, and I met my colleague who I kind of co-founded this ÉnergieRich with. And so he's from Burkina Faso.
Wow.
And so he is a leader in expanding energy access, solar access to people in Burkina in the rural areas. And so we were always at the same cafe doing work, and then we just started talking, and he was telling me about what he was doing, and he's a Sankarist, and we were just talking about not only the importance of energy and thinking about management of natural resources, but also job creation, and also issues around, again, going back to political economy, how can you grow an economy if it's reliant on imports, and so the problem with not having value-added goods, just being a space of extraction and not a place of production. And so he's also a farmer, and so he was talking about, like, for example, in Burkina, even though there are a lot of poultry farmers, for the most part, they import frozen chickens from Europe. I mean, it's crazy, and so it's like, how then can the poultry sector be bolstered? And so connecting energy with that. And so, for example, he uses electric powered incubators to kind of accelerate poultry production. But as soon as there's disruption with the electricity, you can lose a batch of eggs. Exactly. Or you're using your generator, which is using, kind of oil, it's expensive, so all of these things. And then also the incubator is imported, so if anything goes wrong with the incubator, then people are looking for parts that they don't have, or they don't know how to fix it. And so the idea, the first product that we started talking about was building a solar powered poultry egg incubator that can be built locally, so that people can just build them themselves, or you have a small scale production to build the incubator, so that people could improve and kind of modernize their poultry techniques using clean energy.
Wow.
And so you have sustainable amount of energy, so you know that your eggs are going to hatch and all of that. So I started working with a team, and also one of the things is like I'm very interested in the connection between Africa and the diaspora. Again, going back to Kwame Nkrumah and Pan-Africanism, and I think that connection is really important. That we work together for a better future. And so I started working with Black students at Stanford University because there's I think they have it here, National Society of Black Engineers. And at Stanford, they call it Stanford Society of Black Scientists and Engineers or something like that. So I was really lucky because I was able to get an incredible group of students who were just fully dedicated, and they were able to build a prototype incubator. Wow. We brought it over to Burkina. We had some problems with it. We made 2 trips. But I mean, it was just an incredible experience, and some of them, for all of them, I think, it was their first trip to Africa, and so that was also really important for them. We did have 2 students whose parents were from Nigeria, so it was just kind of this nice group of diaspora, and they're just so brilliant. And then that was the first time we started doing. I was working with a friend of mine who's an engineer in the Silicon Valley. And we've been talking for a long time because he's very interested, and he's white, but he was also very interested in kind of this idea of thinking about imports as well. I was like, why, are there spaces where people are so brilliant and there's so much knowledge, like we're seeing with the students? Why not train people to just create these products themselves? And so one of my colleague, actually Brema Cabre from Burkina, came to the US a couple times, and one of those times we were in my friend's backyard, and he taught us how to build solar panels, and then we brought that to Burkina, and that was just so popular. Like, so we were working in Brema's shop, and people would come by all the time, and they're like, how can I learn how to do that? I really want to know how to do that. And so so that's kind of how things in general.
The whole story is just amazing. Like that's just in how would I say 7 minutes, like you were able to box all what has happened maybe in like 4-5 years just into one. It's so incredible. And earlier on when we spoke, that was I think on Saturday, and we're talking about how we have to always import stuff and all that. And I was also thinking about energy, and we're talking about clean energy, we're talking about green environment and all that. Once we stop importing, that means that our water bodies, there will be less stress in the sea for the fishes to actually we not have this kind of oil spilling in our seas and all that. So aside from just skill training and also improving the economy, we're also saving the environment in one way or the other. Let's you have this background in political science, so let me chip in a bit. When we talk of Malcolm X, he was also going on a revolution. We talk of Sankara too, but when you look at the Sankara aspect, the narrative is usually more a bit bloody. I don't know. What's your perspective on that?
Well, I guess I would say that they're political leaders, whereas Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X were kind of revolutionaries from the outside, right? So they weren't elected officials. And so I don't know, perhaps that's part of it. Because once you are in a political office, it's just you have a kind of a different framework in which you're working in
the society.
Whereas Malcolm and Muhammad Ali, were very outspoken about human rights, about black rights, but from outside of the system. So I don't know if that's part of it.
Now I'm thinking that would be part of it.
So let's say if Malcolm were elected, president of the United States, that would be he would be in a different space. Whereas, being outside, he's a bit freer to really be honest and open about his critiques of the political system.
All right. So last one on that. Sankara and Nkrumah. I think what they were trying to achieve is what your company is doing at the moment. They were trying to self-independence, self-reliant, and that was what they were striving towards. I know a bit of Sankara's idea of agriculture, how there was abundant food in his time, how he's able to manage stuff. We saw Nkrumah too with his silos and other ideas. It was more like impacting on the people, harnessing the skills of the people, the individual people, and letting them impact them directly instead of just concerned with bringing in, importing and all that. Your energy project, do you sometimes, when you work, especially with this your co-partner in Burkina, when you work, do you sometimes feel like you're continuing the work of your ancestors?
Yeah, actually it's so interesting you said that, because I think the thought of my ancestors is actually constantly on my mind, particularly when I'm in Africa, because I don't often talk about this when I'm here, because I'm not sure how people will respond, but like the African American experience is an experience of a lot of pain and brutality that we've experienced. And I'm not sure how people see us. I think sometimes from Africa, and maybe you can help me with this, looking at African Americans, like people see celebrities and think that that's kind of our lives, but they are kind of the exceptions. And so for the most of African Americans, it's really a struggle of dealing with racism every day, police brutality, all of these types of things. So I think the first time that I came to Ghana, I had a very powerful moment going to like Cape Coast Castle and Elmina and thinking about, there was somebody in my family that took that journey. So it's definitely in my mind a lot, the thought of the ancestors, and that they're with me, and that part of this experience, I feel like they must be with me, because there was, during, slavery existed in the U.S. longer than the U.S. has actually been a country, right? And so, there was, this kind of myths and legends that many people who were enslaved would talk about, and one of the things many people would believe that when they died, their spirit would fly back to Africa. And so sometimes I think about, like, what would my ancestors think if they saw me here? And also the other thing I think that people don't realize is how close slavery is for us. So for example, my great grandmother was born into slavery, and she was a child before the end of slavery, and that's very close, right? So for many of us, I think Michelle Obama talks about that too. It's like I think her great grandparents were also born into slavery. My parents, couldn't drink at a certain water fountain, and that level of humiliation that you deal with every day has a big impact. So, so it's important for me to be here, and some of the things I've been reflecting on is like, I like being in Africa just not to experience racism.
That was going to be my next question on that.
It's a very liberating feeling.
Like you just walk among people.
To just not experience it.
Maybe until you talk, then someone realizes that, oh, you're not from here. But you don't walk around feeling that, all right, in this particular area, I'm black.
Exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Like we always have to have like a third or sixth sense or something like that to also, like keep one eye open, because what's going to happen here? So every time you like leave the house, you have to be hyper aware of how you move and how people are going to respond to you, and it's very stressful. So it's nice to be in a place where I don't have to worry about that.
Now, let's come back to energy. I think it's good that we got this. Let's come back to energy now. Let's calm down. We mentioned Nkrumah, at least we've touched on Sankara, we've touched on what you did in Burkina Faso. Now let's come down to Nkrumah. We mentioned the silos, and but let's look at the silos. Let's also look at what other interventions that Nkrumah was bringing, and let's see how we can connect it to what you're doing currently. That is, he started something about the nuclear power plant in Tema. But that was also in relation to energy.
Right.
Let's start with how you navigated to Ghana. Like, what happened?
That's actually an interesting story. Yeah, so what happened is that, well, we ran into a problem because we could no longer travel to Burkina because of the problems there now.
Yes.
So there's a travel warning, and so Americans can't go there, and I can't take students there.
Yeah.
So I was working with really some amazing students. One of the students who is now a student at MIT, and so his name is Stuart Isaacs, and so he MIT he's studying his PhDs in aeronautics and astronautics, and Nosa Enamoya is another student who's now at the University of Michigan studying mechanical engineering, getting a PhD in mechanical engineering. And so what happened is that MIT is very good in terms of funding some of these projects, and they really liked ours. And so they were able to get some funding from MIT and start an internship program at Ashesi. And so that's how we started getting connected with Ghana and Ashesi. And so that's how it happened. And so then they were continuing work on the incubator to try to improve it, and then Nosa and Stuart got the first ever teaching fellowship at Ashesi. So they were teaching there up until COVID, and then they had to come back.
Wow.
But then I came to visit during the internship program, and I was so impressed by Ashesi and the students, and so then I just kind of kept in touch, and then wanted to see if because we have two Ashesi interns who are amazing, Sifu and Shefatu, and so I was like, hey, can we bring some Ashesi students? And they're also from the north, and so that's kind of how things ended up in Ghana. But it also happens to be that Ghana was the first country in Africa that I ever visited too. So I think it has a special place for African Americans as well.
Okay, all right, and. Now you got in contact with Ashesi, you got in contact with Yusuf and Sherifa. Now let's come down. Before you got in contact with them, did you have any prior, knowledge or information about SCCA, about Ibrahim, about his work?
So when I was actually visiting with the internship, I stayed in an Airbnb of all things. With a woman who's just amazing. Her name is Manuela, and she's Italian, and she was here for the Chaliwata Festival.
Festival,
and so we just started talking because I was actually where I work also at UC Santa Barbara, University of California, Santa Barbara. I work at a place that's called the Global Environmental Justice Project, and we had also been thinking like, okay, let's think about doing like a study abroad program that's focused on environmental justice. And so I was thinking, because I'm really interested in like interdisciplinary work. So, like I'm a political scientist, but I'm also really interested in how science is important, and also I was very interested in kind of like putting art into this as well, because I feel like the artists are the ones who like push our imagination, and I think that's really important. So she just started telling me about really important artists in Ghana right now. Of course, she mentioned Ibrahim. I was like, oh, okay. And I just started doing a little research on him. And then she said she had talked to Ibrahim, and he was interested in putting solar at SCCA or at Red Clay. And I was like, well, we do community-based, solar work, so we can have the community build solar panels, and he really liked it, and so that's actually how he liked the idea. So then that's how we ended up.
So now you had this relationship with Aseshi and the students, and you now had it private. So how did when did you say, okay, you know what, it's time for us to do this? Let's come to Tamale and let's start this whole solar panel.
Yeah, I mean, when I started doing a little bit more research about Ibrahim and his art, I was like, wow, this is really amazing. I mean, he's, kind of using kind of found objects, but also with the sacks.
The jute sacks.
The jute sacks. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, it's incredible. The kind of breadth of thought and, you know, imagination that goes into what he's doing, and then kind of draping the jute sacks over the public buildings and allowing for, you know, people like regular, he's like deconstructing this kind of whole idea of the elite museums, you know, and making it accessible to people. Like all of these things I thought were so interesting. Is like the way he kind of thinks about labor and production. I was like, in politics, I was like, wow, this is really great, you know. So yeah, I was just really excited to be able to even come here, and I think us doing the solar building at Red Clay is so perfect because we had like school groups come by and see what we were doing, and you know, doing the innovation workshops here at SCCA. It's just been really exciting. So yeah, I think it's just rare to find this synergy of just a thought and just kind of vision of thinking beyond what exists today. And I think one of the other things is like, I just want to say that one thing that I'm concerned about, and I think kind of drives what I'm doing a bit, is that I grew up in the Silicon Valley, and I think there's this model, this Western model, that's like, oh, everybody's supposed to do it like Silicon Valley. But growing up there, I see all the flaws in that. You know, how it creates you know, a big division in class, right? And so, you know, there's just so many things wrong, I think, with this Western model. And so I like being in these spaces where it's like there's kind of this energy around critiquing that. And there's a book that's influenced me a lot, which is What Does Innovation Look Like from Africa, right? So thinking about, you know, pre-colonial Africa, and thinking about what innovation looked like before colonialism came and segmented science away from art, instead of thinking of these things working together, you know. And yeah, so just, you know, I you know, even though we're doing all this stuff around science and technology and Arduino and all this type of stuff, but just to also hopefully instill in the students that they can create their own vision that is really not necessarily Western, and not bringing all of the negative things that kind of that Western.
And I don't know how to put this. When I came to Red Clay on Saturday, working with the students here, I mean the teachers, the students, and also these two Asahi University alumni, right? If that's right, they're graduates, right? The experience, comparing that to Burkina Faso, is there some different in the way we think, or do we think alike in terms of the working experience?
That's an interesting question. I think in terms of Ghana, there's just more opportunities to partner with academic institutions. That was harder in Burkina. The other thing that was really challenging is that I speak French, but my students don't. And so it was constantly like, okay, we have to translate everything. So that was a little bit difficult. But I think there's just a level of kind of institutional-ish support. I mean, like, I don't want to say like as formal institutions in some way, but, you know, like, for example, Ashesi is just this incredible place that we are, you know, able to find these amazing students where I think it was a lot harder. Just everything's a little bit harder in Burkina. You know, Burkina's an amazing place, I love it, but, you know, it just was a little more challenging, you know, on so many levels, logistically and things like that. I mean, I felt in Burkina people are incredibly welcing, so I definitely felt very, very welcome and at home there. It's just that, you know, they went through this revolution recently, you know, I mean, it's just a lot of instability. And so, and then look, we can't even go there anymore. So that was a lot of the challenge. And like I say, the language definitely was hard. So everything that we would write, we'd have to translate into French, and so that became a bit
Okay,
difficult.
yeah.
But like when we had this connection with the Chessie, that opened up a lot of things. Making this connection with Ibrahim has opened up a lot for us to be able to do the work here.
All right. Sometimes I feel like we usually worry that something has ended, but we don't acknowledge that the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't. This journey wasn't alone, right? So when I was a student and I was studying abroad, I met somebody who was very important to me, and we were able to travel a lot throughout West Africa. And so, he's Yoruba, but he grew up in Niger, but then he was living in Ghana. Speaks many languages.
Wow.
And so when we were traveling together, that made a huge impact on me because I was able just to be another girl, another woman.
Yes.
And so and I think that made also a big impact on me because I know a lot of African Americans come here and are not necessarily connected in a way. And so I was able to have that connection. And so I think that, and be engaged in conversations that I don't think that I would ever have access to otherwise. And so that really made a very big impact.
It's like having a compass. Like you don't feel like, you feel like the compass is so right, like when you're with that person, like you don't think you're gonna get it wrong, or even if you get it wrong, there's this perspective you look at it from that it goes well for you.
And I wasn't surrounded by Americans, like I was the only one. So that made a huge difference. And then, of course, then people wouldn't. It was funny because then I got to the point where people didn't believe that I was American, so I just stopped saying I was American.
That means that you are not fully accepted. You've been fully accepted. And what are some of, let's say, top 3 beautiful moments you had with this person? Traveling around,
one of the most fascinating places I think I've ever been in my life is Djenne in Mali. So I loved going there. And then spending time there. Oh my gosh. There's so many moments. Niger, because I really love Niger as well. Because that's what I was doing. I was doing research on the uranium mining, so I was able to actually go into uranium mining. That was crazy. That's when you really see the level of exploitation that's happening in Africa as well, because knowing that the majority of the energy that in France is coming from nuclear energy. Well, so much of that is coming from uranium mines, and people are working 24/7. There's no health care. It's the level of exploitation of the workers is pretty horrifying. And then also, like, I think traveling to Kinshasa, that was also really interesting. But of course, always my time in Ghana.
My final question on this, I don't know how to phrase it. If he's listening to this podcast, happen to chance on this and listen to it, what would you like to tell?
Oh my gosh, I think I would just like to tell him thank you for that period of time. Like, it was incredibly important, and it definitely shaped my life. I mean, I don't think I would be here now without that experience. That's for sure.
This is beautiful. Now let's touch on the robotics, then we just go to the end of the conversation. Solar panels and robotics. What is the goal here for your organization? What is the goal? Because one would say you're not done with the solar idea. You're still and you're already on robotics again. Like, from your perspective, what is the goal? Help us see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, one of the goals, also in 2 different kind of ways. So we've got what I would say the innovation workshops, which is the elementary school, elementary secondary school kids, is to really kind of allow them to have access to this knowledge, to open up their own imagination. And so one of the things that I've kind of tried to instill, and the interns are doing such an amazing job of this, is saying, like, how can you use this knowledge to better your community, right? So to just kind of open up that kind of space of imagination for them, whereas maybe they would not have had that chance to think about like building a little robot or learning about Arduino, and then they loved it, and they want to stay. They want to keep working on it. So that's been really great. So really kind of opening up a sense of imagination for the K through 12. For the solar panel, so this was my first time doing the solar panel. Like I said, I did it in Burkina, and we were planning to continue it until we couldn't go anymore. So, I wanted to see how was it going to be the same type of reception that we had in Burkina, where people were so excited. And yes, that has happened. The students were thrilled about being able to build their own solar panels. And so right now we're trying to figure out how can we continue this program so that the students maybe be at the point, at the end of the academic year, that they're actually building panels that can be used, that can be sold. So I think right now we're kind of trying to figure that out, it was just wildly popular. They really loved it, and I was really excited to see that level of enthusiasm. So this idea of like you can do it yourself, really again going back to Sankara, like there's no reason to import anything because the continent is full of wealth. It's human resources, natural resources, the sun. I mean, everything is here. And so I think that maybe that's not a message that's repeated for people to really grasp. And so hopefully these type of projects will help to kind of tap into that, and so that people can be like, let's just do it here. There's no reason to continue importing.
And now that this is happening, or it has happened, that you've successfully done both projects at the same time, you're combining, they're all moving smoothly. Before you started, when there was this instability in Burkina, you had to like put a stop in it, and now that you're seeing it like just move in this breadth of with a touch of art in that environment and all that. Personally, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling really excited. I mean, I gotta say I was nervous. I didn't know how things were gonna come about, and I'm just really thrilled. I mean, everybody here is amazing. It's really overwhelming. Like, it's just thrilling. I'm really, really happy. It's nice to hear some of the comments, like some of the students, the younger students were saying, I'm going to become an engineer, I'm going to change the world, so that kind of energy is really exciting. And I got to say too, like, talking about like the engineers that I've been working with in the US as well, most of the black engineers that I have worked with, they say they don't want to go work for these big corporations. They want to make the world a better place. And so, kind of this enthusiasm and this energy coming from both sides of the Atlantic of saying like, let's make the world a better place, is like that's how change really happens. And so that's what I'm hoping can continue, like we can continue working together.
And my final one is, someone listening will be like, okay, who is Dr. Dena? Like, where did she grow up? Where did she go to school? Like, what food does she like? A little bit about your early life and why you chose to become a doctor in political science, and so on. Let's say I'm expecting energy, really clean energy.
I mean, like I said, I grew up in the Silicon Valley, so that's just south of San Francisco, and then I went to college on the East Coast at a school called Brown University. Lived in New York for a while, then I moved back to California to get my PhD at University of California, Los Angeles. And I've always been interested in politics, even from when I was young. I just remember being like obsessed with learning about political history. And so, so even as an undergrad, I would take, politics classes. I always wanted to know more about the world. So I would kind of, just read a lot. And like I said, my first trip to Africa was a study abroad program in college, and that had a huge impact on me. So yeah, so and now I live in Santa Barbara,
Okay.
which is about a couple hours north of Los Angeles. It's a
Yeah.
small city, about like 100,000 people. It's right on the coast. It's very beautiful.
Wow.
So I love kind of the outdoors. And yeah, just very lucky to have wonderful friends and family, and yeah. So.
And since you came to Ghana, which food has been your favorite so far?
I forget what it's called, but it's something with the beans. Oh gosh, what is it?
Plantain, rice and
Oh
beans.
yeah, that was good. The waji.
Wachi.
Yeah,
okay,
that's,
the
I think
rice
that's my
with mixed
favorite.
with beans. Okay,
Yeah, it's really good.
all right.
Yeah.
So I think we end here, and I will say that my last words will be like, Dr. Dena, welcome home.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.